Lifting Leaders podcast. I'm Kristal Roberts, co-host to our show, and today I'm solo because I'm sharing another Spark episode. These are our short episodes, usually around 10 minutes, where one small moment, one personal experience becomes a lesson about leadership, life, and what it means to care well for one another. Before we begin, I want to offer a brief content note. Today's story involves a kayaking accident that could have ended very differently. If hearing about accidents feels difficult for you, I invite you to choose another episode this week and come back when you're ready. This is also the first time I've shared this story publicly. For years, I've only told it to close friends and family because honestly, it feels very vulnerable. But sometimes the lessons that change us the most are the ones we're least comfortable telling. This story happened several years ago. My son had just come home from college for the summer. He was excited to be back in the Pacific Northwest and asked if we could spend the day kayaking together on one of our favorite lakes, a place that our family had visited since he was a little boy. It was one of those perfect spring mornings, sunny, cool, quiet. I remember pulling out my favorite wool sweater because spring water in Washington is cold, and wool stays warm even when it's wet. That little detail will matter later. My husband, my son, and I loaded our kayaks into the truck and headed toward the lake. When we arrived, there was only a handful of people there. The lake was almost perfectly still. Glass. We paddled across the open water and entered my favorite part of the lake, a narrow channel surrounded by towering rock walls with lush ferns and mossy trees reaching across the channel. Water dripped slowly from the cliffs and foliage. The sunlight caught each drop as it fell. Drip, drip, drip. Everything about that place invited you to slow down. It really felt peaceful. I remember thinking how grateful I was. Grateful for my son who was home. Grateful we were together. Grateful for beauty. I even stopped and took a picture of my water bottle because it had a Lifting Leaders podcast sticker on it. And I thought our listeners would love to see this place. Funny how ordinary moments become extraordinary memories. Eventually, we reached the end of the channel where a small river feeds into the lake. Normally, in the summer, it's barely moving. But this was spring. Snow melt had changed everything. The current was much stronger than we expected. We decided to carry or portage our kayaks around the swiftest section before continuing upstream. After paddling a little farther, it became obvious we weren't going any farther. The current was just simply too strong. So we turned around. Then came the decision. Do we carry the kayaks around the current again or ride the current back through? There wasn't much time. My son committed first. He stayed in his kayak. I followed him, partly because I trusted him, mostly because I didn't want to lose sight of him. He handled the current beautifully. I didn't. What I couldn't see from where I was were there were log jams lining both sides of the river. Every kayaker knows to stay away from log jams. Water can pin you underneath them. Before I could react, the current shoved my kayak sideways into one, hard. I remember thinking one clear thought, I have to get out of this kayak. I pushed myself up. The current immediately pulled me underneath. Everything became quiet. I was underwater, pinned beneath the logs. I could see my kayak above me. I could see daylight. I swam toward it with everything I had. But I wasn't getting closer. The current was stronger than I was. Time slowed. I thought about my son. I imagined him watching his mother die. Then I thought about my husband and knew exactly what he would do. He would come after me and I couldn't bear the thought that he might die trying to save me. That's when I realized something. The only direction I was trying to swim was backward. Back toward where I had come from. Back toward what felt familiar. Back toward what felt safe. But there was no life there anymore. There was only the logjam. Only death. And in that moment, I let go. I stopped fighting to return. I trusted the current. Instead of swimming backward, I swam with it, toward wherever it wanted to take me. I could see light above me. I swam. My heavy wool sweater dragged at my shoulders. My lungs burned. Just as I thought I couldn't keep going any longer, my foot touched a rock. My hand found a branch. I pushed, pulled, and broke through the surface. I gasped for air. The water was so cold I couldn't catch my breath. I stumbled toward shore one slow step at a time until I reached the riverbank. Then I watched my kayak float by, completely full of water. A few moments later, my husband's kayak floated by, also full of water. Then my Lifting Leaders podcast water bottle drifted by. Even in that moment, I almost laughed. And then I saw my husband. I was so relieved. Neither of us needed many words. My son was waiting farther down the shore, safe. We were all safe. We still had to paddle back across the lake. We still had to load the kayaks, and we still had to drive home. But something inside me had changed. As we drove away, I kept thinking about two futures. One future ended beneath the logjam. The other continued down the river. The only difference between these two futures was that I let go. I stopped trying to return to the way things had been. I trusted the current to carry me somewhere new. That day taught me something I have never forgotten. Sometimes hope isn't found by holding on. Sometimes hope begins when we finally let go. As we've talked throughout this season about igniting genuine hope, I've come to believe that hope isn't about pretending everything will work out exactly as we planned. Hope is having the courage to release the future we imagined so we could discover the future still waiting for us. As leaders, we often cling to certainty, to strategies, to identities, to relationships, to plans that once served us well. But sometimes those things become our own logjams. And the very thing we're holding on to is preventing us from moving toward life. So here's my spark question for you today. Where are you still trying to swim backward? What are you holding on to because it feels familiar, even though there's no longer life there? Where might hope be asking you to loosen your grip, trust the current, and discover a future you couldn't yet imagine? For me, life has a little more color now. The little things don't seem quite so important. Not every day. I'm still human. But I find myself a little more willing to trust the river. Maybe that's what hope looks like. Not certainty. Trust. Thank you for joining me for this Sparks episode. If today's story resonated with you, would you share it with someone who may be holding onto something that no longer serves them? Until next time, keep lifting others, keep leading with hope, and trust the river.